What's happening, people? You're listening to The Introverted Nerd Watches. I am your host, Reese, and in this episode, I watched Season 1, Episode 3 of The Gifted, coMplications. So, first of all, I'm freaking freezing right now. And I have to take the air conditioner out of the window, so if you hear my teeth chattering, just know that I am cold and I don't have a jacket on right now. And number two, if you hear some construction going on, my neighbor is having, I don't know, their house rebuilt. Who the fuck knows what's happening over there, but they're making a lot of noise and they're playing a lot of music. So if you hear that in the background as well, I apologize. Those mofos just go all day long. It's fucking Saturday and they're at work. Come on, you guys. Give me a break. First thing in the goddamn morning. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning and they over there like hitting things and whatever. I can't even complain to anybody. So The Gifted. coMplications. So I didn't really love this episode. We get to see some things. We get introduced to the Morlocks. So we get little things like that. I feel like, I didn't hate it, but it was like they keep doing some of the stuff that I don't like showing flashbacks to stuff that we've already seen like very recently in the last episode. They did that. They did the flashbacks in the last episode to the first episode, and they did it again in this episode to episode 2. It's not necessary. I don't understand. You don't have to have a character have a flashback to something that happened, an episode ago, just, to remind us. We can see him, whatever. Before I get too far into it, you need to subscribe to the podcast because you should already be subscribed to the podcast if you're listening. So go to Apple Podcasts if you have an iPhone. Subscribe. Leave me a 5-star review and we'll be good with each other. We'll be all straight. If you, like myself, have an Android device, you have so many other options. You go to Google Play and Stitcher and TuneIn and iHeartRadio. Wherever you get your podcast, go to that place and subscribe. And if you can, leave me a review, rate and review the podcast on those places too, because I want to spread my word to the world. Recommend me to friends, just do your job. I'm doing my job. You do your job. Everybody will be happy. And, we can all be a part of my plan to take over the world. I am continuing to make this plan my world domination plan. I call it my pinky in the brain plan, like I told you last week. So it's all in the works. You just gotta follow my lead, people. I know what I'm doing. I just have to find my pinky because obviously I'm the brain. So I have to find myself a pinky. Yeah. Let's get into The Gifted because I am obviously very loopy right now. So Marco's so the timing of some of this stuff is kind of confusing because it feels like, on the one hand, it feels like a little like days would have passed, but on the other hand, the way they talk about things is like they just happened like very recently, like day before. So example, Marcos and his drunkenness in the last episode and his little light display for Lorna and Dawn at the end of the last episode. So it feels like, they mention it. It just happened. It made the news and everything. So that, that checks out. That all makes sense. But then Jace comes in at the end, in this episode, and he's in DC now, or he's in the DC area now. So I'm like, just the last episode, he was talking about he was, trying to get information about the baby that was born. So not the baby. No, he wasn't trying to get information about the baby that was born. He recognized Lorna's powers on display, the blackout. That's what I was talking about. So he recognized the blackout, and that was just in the last episode. The blackout made the news as well, because all this stuff makes the news now. So the blackout makes news, and he's going around looking for information, trying to get people to buy into what he's talking about. And he was in Atlanta, I assume, but now he's in DC in this episode. And it was like all of this happened just like within a couple of days of each other. And I get it. There are airplanes and everything. Airplanes exist, but it just feels like the timing doesn't really make sense to me. But I don't know. It's a minor thing to get hung up on, because I don't think it really matters. But that's what I do. So Marcos's light show made the paper, and he talks to John and Clarice, because he comes down to them the next day, basically with his tail between his legs, to tell them like, oh shit, I fucked up. I was drinking last night. And Clarice tells him like, yo, dude, if you're gonna drunk dial your ex, just make sure it's like in private, don't put on a display for the fucking world, because we're supposed to be underground. The whole point, we're supposed to be dead. Like, you're not supposed to be doing shit like this. But yeah, what he did make the paper, and they're not happy about that. So Clarice and John they're planning to go to see Erg, to go to the underground, to go to the sewer system to, try to find Erg. They won't let Marcos come with them. And see, I was just praising Clarice and John last week because I still love their relationship. They're my ship. But I don't like that John won't talk to Clarice in this episode. I don't like a lot of the guys in this episode where they won't speak. Like, Reed and John are doing the exact same goddamn thing where they won't use their fucking words. It's like, dude, come on. Clarice is asking John questions like, what's wrong with you? He's obviously a little different. She tells him that he's been different since he saw Evangeline, and he won't say anything about it. He's just sort of, brushing it off. And then she notices the bruises on his hand from last episode where he was punching the metal thing. And she's like, okay, you're not right since you spoke to Evangeline, and you also have these bruises. Like, dude, we've been together for almost a year. I recognize the fact that there is something wrong. I've seen you hit a lot of things. I've seen you use your hands a lot, and you've never had something like this happen. Something is wrong. Tell me what's wrong. And, he brushes her off, and it's to the point where they're not really arguing, but there is like this real tension between them in the entire episode. So, she has this, she's a bit snarky, and I identify with Clarice, because my first inclination to deal with things is to make like a snarky comment, to basically resort to jokes when I get uncomfortable. And I think that's what she does. She sort of tries to joke things off to make them less serious. But she also, unlike me, wants to actually know what's wrong with him. I am not that good a girlfriend, because if somebody tells me there's nothing wrong, I usually like, oh, thank God, emotions avoided. Win for me. But she, actually a good girlfriend, would like to know what's wrong with him, and he won't tell her. And and it's frustrating throughout the episode. So they get to the sewer system, and the Morlocks have sort of a security system set up where there's a mutant there that has powers that messes up John's tracking ability. But Clarice, being the badass that she is, I don't know, it's not a big deal, but it's like sort of a furthering of her ability for her. She tells him that she can see through force fields, or she uses a power that says she can see through energy fields or something like that, and she recognizes like the fake walls and shit that are around. And eventually they get to Erg, or they get held up by this group of like 5 or 6 mutants. And it's so funny because they all have guns, and they start, they tell them they want to see Erg. They need to talk to Erg. And they surround them, and they start walking Clarice and John down the hall. And Clarice says to John, can't you take care of them? And he's like, there are 5 of them. Like, what am I supposed to do? And she's like, but you're bulletproof. He goes, but you're not. And I'm like, yeah, Clarice, like, what were you going to do if he just starts going off on these motherfuckers and like you get shot, you're dead. So, I mean, it was so funny because it's like she forgot that she that she wasn't bulletproof. It cracked me up. But anyway, they get to Erg, and Erg is a black guy. I believe Erg is in the comics. I try not to do too much. There are like places where they explain like where all of these characters show up in the comics and all that. And I try not to go too far into that, because I don't want to be that person that's on here like, oh, this is different from the comics. This is how it happened in the comics. This is how this person looks in the comics. So I like to go in like pretty, slate sort of clean, let the show do whatever it's going to do. And maybe I'll read up on it later. Maybe not, but let's just say that I will. So they meet Erg, and Erg wants to talk to Clarice. So I was like, this is going to be a problem, because he recognizes, I don't know what his power is. He's wearing like one goggle, or I thought it was an eye patch at first, but it's just like this one goggle he has on. So maybe he doesn't have an eye. I don't know. I don't even know what his mutant ability is. So, but he talks to Clarice, and he recognizes that she's a visible mutant. Like her eyes and her ears are like pointy. So he tells her that down here they get to be free, and that up on the surface they would have to hide the way that she does, hide the fact that she's a mutant. And down here, the people that are visible mutants get to be, walk around freely, and the people that aren't visible mutants get an N sort of branded onto their skin, so they can identify with the others, because they don't want to have to hide their mutant abilities. And Clarice tells him, like, hey, we're up there with the X-Men. We're trying to save mutants, and they're trying to help. And he's like, the X-Men weren't looking to, no, she was saying that the X-Men were fighting for freedom. And he's like, no, the X-Men were not fighting for freedom. They were fighting for tolerance. And what do people tolerate? They tolerate the things that they hate. And basically he's saying, like, that's no kind of life. To live in a society where people are only forced to tolerate you sounds good for some people, I guess, but to them, that's not really freedom. That doesn't really get you anything in the long run, I think. So, yeah, and this really is like, it's so today. It's so, tolerate black people, tolerate Muslims, and, these groups of people that mostly white people are sort of, don't want to tolerate. And we see how toleration is working for us, right? White people have lost their fucking minds. So, yeah, toleration. That's what we want. That's what we're fighting for. So Clarice and Erg continue to talk, and he tells her the story of how the purifiers came, and the purifiers are fucking awful. By the way, they took a girl, and I forget what her name was, but she has some sort of ability to use like a clicking sound that she made. And because the purifiers thought that whatever was wrong with that, they cut out her voice box. And I'm like, yo, the purifiers are fucking hardcore. I mean, in the last episode when Reva told Angsty Andy about the purifiers killing her friend, it was sort of hard to tell because I couldn't tell whether Reva was telling the truth or whether, she was trying to manipulate Andy. But that's whatever. She doesn't go into a whole lot of detail about what exactly happened to her friend, just that they, killed her and she watched her bleed out. But cutting out somebody's voice box because you're afraid of them, because you don't like that they have a mutant ability, is fucked up. And I wonder if they're going to show purifiers on this, show what the purifiers actually do. We see the mutant, we see the Sentinel service, how hardcore Sentinel service is, but the purifiers seem like something different. Are the purifiers, maybe I missed this. Are the purifiers a government thing, or are they just sort of like vigilante, a vigilante type group? If anybody knows, hit me up on Twitter and tell me what's going on with the purifiers. And is that from the comics? Yeah, I would like to know that. Don't tell me a whole bunch of other stuff, but just tell me, are the purifiers in the comics? And what else did I say? Whatever. I said it already, so I literally can't remember what I just said 2 seconds ago. But anyway, the end of this is that Erg, and for the information that they want, Erg wants Blink to be a spy for him. And we never see, she asks him, yo, you want me to be a spy for you? But we never see him answer. We see him smile, and we cut away from that, and they go back. And so Clarice and John get out of there, and she tells him that the Cuckoos, or the Frosts, the Frost sisters, as they call them on the show. The Cuckoos sound so much better. But the Frost sisters, they went to the Department of Health or the health department, and they ran a data cable tapping into the Department of Health. So what exactly is Reva trying to get from the Department of Health? How is this going to help with her world domination? Or no, I'm a world dominator. How is this going to help with her revolution? I really cannot think of anything that you would get from the Department of Health about that would help her with her revolution. I mean, except if she wants to find out who all the mutants are. But I don't know. I guess Cerebro doesn't exist in this world. Or, nobody is around to help, use Cerebro. Who knows? But I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, that she wants to find other mutants. So she went to the Department of Health. So who the hell knows? The end of with John and Clarice is that they get back home, and Clarice is still like, yo, dude, tell me what's going on. And it gets to the point where she thinks that there's something wrong, that he's upset with her, or that she thinks that there's something wrong with her, or their relationship. And this is when he finally confesses that, there's nothing wrong with their relationship, or at least there's nothing wrong with her. She didn't do anything wrong. He tells her what Evangeline said is basically, Lorna and Andy will never come back to them, that they're going to end up having to kill them, because they will never be out of the inner circle. They will, it's basically a gang, you get jumped in and it's basically for life. And another thing happens that I don't like. Once he explains, Clarice, holds his hand and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." And it's like, of course you didn't know. He just told you, this is, and she does it in the last episode too, where when he tells her about what happened, about how Evangeline, chained him to the bed and stuff, and how, bad things were once he got out of the military. And she says that in that episode too, where she says, "Oh, I didn't know." And I'm going to choose to believe, it's annoying to me that she does that, but I'm going to choose to believe that it's just sort of her being like awkwardly not knowing what to say in that situation, that it's just a little quirk of hers rather than, bad writing. So yeah. So that is them. Let's go to Marcos and Lorna. So Marcos is like trying to recover from his hangover from the night before, and he goes to a diner, and while he's there, he starts hearing the cuckoos in his head calling his name. And I'm like, they are just they're just fucking with him, because he's looking around and he obviously doesn't know what's going on while he's hearing people calling his name in his head. But it's like, at any point they could have said, "Marcos, come outside. It's the fucking cuckoos. We need to talk to you." Because we spend a few minutes, probably not a few minutes, but we spend a minute with him just hearing voices in his head, looking around, and it's like they really just wanted to fuck with Marco, which I appreciate. I love my cuckoos. So when he gets outside, they tell him that something's wrong with Dawn, and we see earlier in the episode that Dawn has like an extreme case of jaundice, and the light therapy that they're doing for her doesn't work. So they need Marcos, because he's the fucking son, to come light her up or something. So they take him, they cover his head, they take him to their hideout, and Reva tells him, "Hey dude, you go, you help the baby, you don't talk to Lorna about anything but the baby." And Marcos is kind of disrespectful. And, he's looking at her like, "Are you serious?" Like, he's looking at Reva in her beautiful outfit with her beautiful face. And he's like, he's not taking her seriously. And that's strike number one for him, because you do not disrespect my Reva Page. I'm such a villain. I'm such a bad guy, because I'm like, Reva is doing the wrong, like, she's doing bad things here. She's got nefarious plans, and Marcos just wants to see his daughter. But I'm getting mad at him because he's not being respectful. Like, these men that Reva runs into, the inner circle dudes, now Marcos, just not respecting my girl's power. She's not just a pretty face, you guys. She will fuck people up. And he learns at the end of this episode too, don't fuck with Reva. So he agrees to that, and he goes to see the baby, and it's this really sad moment where he sees the baby, and he and Lorna see each other, and it's like, be together, you guys. Be in love, be together. You love each other. So he he finally suns up Dawn and he fixes her. She's fine. And he starts, once it's all over, he tries to talk to Lorna, and he tells Lorna that he let her leave at the end, last season, because he didn't want anybody around them to get hurt, but he should have gone after her. He should have fought for her. And she's listening, but she's not really responding to him. And, he eventually tells her, like, I love you. I love the baby. Come with me. Come back with me. And she tells him, love is not enough. Love don't pay those bills. Love don't stop the purifiers from cutting out your fucking voice box. Like, love don't do shit. She was a lot less harsh than I just was, but basically it's like love is nice, but it doesn't help you that much. So she tells him that what she's doing with Riva is to protect Dawn. And he even tells her that he would stay with them. He'll stay there with them. And she says, no, you would never fit in. He would never be okay with the shit that Riva is doing. And Riva would never let him stay anyway. I don't, like, no matter what happened, no matter whether, Lorna vouched for him or whatever, Riva would not let him stay. She would just not have that. So he eventually has to leave. And, the cuckoos walk him out, and they're I didn't realize this at first, but they're like sort of mind controlling him while they're walking out. But then he has like this burst of love. He's thinking about the baby. He's thinking about Lorna, and he's able to counteract their control of him. And he kind of goes off, he touches them, he burns them with with his hands and everything, but he doesn't really go all out, because obviously he's not trying to burn the whole place down. So he has to be a little more reserved if he wants to go back for Lorna and the baby. And when he breaks free of them, he yells to Lorna, like, they're mind controlling you. Don't believe anything that they say. And Lorna hears all this. Like, I don't know where like, this place seems like a big, it just seems really, it doesn't seem like you'd be able to hear somebody just yelling down the hall is just what I want to say. It's like, he's yelling, but it's like, can you really hear that far? But whatever. Obviously she heard him. But he tries to go back to Lorna, and Riva puts him in his place. He tries to hit her with the light, and she starts using her powers, and it basically, her powers sort of counteract his in a way that it forces his powers like in on himself, so that his arm starts burning up, and then he falls to the ground. And Riva looks at him like, are we done? And I was like, yes, Riva, yes, show him, because this is so bad, because I'm on, like, in theory, I'm on Marcos's side, of wanting to be with his family. But on the other hand, I'm like, I really love Riva. And I want her to get what she wants too. So how can I work this out so that everybody gets what they want? And I get, happy Riva, but it will never work out. Something's going to happen. I hope Riva doesn't die this season at the end of the season or anything. I love her. Like, I'm seriously, like, love her. In case it wasn't, like, abundantly clear, I love her. But she's just so calm about it too. She's like, are we done here? And then she tells Andrew, she goes, now, Andrew, go help your friend to the door. And I'm like, oh. Now, Andy doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know what to do here. We'll get to him in a second. But He helps about, and Marco's basically gets sent home. He's like he can barely walk. Like Reva really fucked him up. But he ends the episode with Clarice and John telling them that he wants to go back, and he's basically looking for revenge. Like Marco's got all kind of problems. We start the episode with him, with the cold open, with him and his father. His father was in some sort of like nun run facility because he was like sick and dying. And Marcos goes to talk to him, and we find out that the father abandoned him. His mother also had powers, but she was forced by the husband to hide them. I mean, I don't know how much we needed that cold open. I don't think it was, very much needed, because it was basically there for us to see that Marco had a bad father who he felt abandoned him. And he's telling Lorna later in the episode that he doesn't want to be like his father, and that he doesn't want to abandon his child. So, I mean, it felt like a long way to go for us to know that Marco's had a deadbeat father. So not necessary, but whatever. It didn't really bother me, but it wasn't, I didn't need it. So let's go to not Von Struckers, to the Struckers. So Caitlin is back, and she's apologizing to Reed about, leaving. And your girl finally notices that she has another child, a daughter, who is also having problems right now. And it's like, thank you, Caitlin, for taking your head out of Angsty Andy's ass for 2 seconds to realize your fucking daughter has got a shit ton of problems right now, and she needs some fucking help. And her father is he's got his own shit going on. He's trying to keep secrets from everybody. He can't deal with anything. Like Lauren continues to be the most level-headed and most intelligent Strucker on this show. And it's like, she deserves so much better than the family she has. She deserves so much better. So Caitlin is trying to get Reed to talk to Lauren, because she notices that Lauren came home the night before and she was really upset, and she really thinks something is wrong with Lauren. Lauren won't talk to anybody. She's not really talking to anybody right now. And so she apologized, but Reed has to go on a run for medical supplies, and she tells him to take Lauren with him. So Lauren does go with him. And she's not talking to Reed right now either. Like, this is right after Lauren tells him about how nobody ever asked her about Andy and all that. So well, I think they're on their way to Baltimore, wherever they're on their way to. She's not really talking to him either. They're sort of just driving in silence. They pick up all the stuff that they need. And then Caitlin calls, and she's looking for the file. She's looking for the file cabinet that Reed melted last week. And she's just walking around looking at everything. Like, she finally is seeing everything. Now that she's not actively looking for Andy, she's looking around and she's seeing all the stuff that's wrong. So she sees the missing file cabinet. She sees the hole that he put in the wall when he touched the brick wall last week. And she's asking him, like, what the hell is what was going on here? What happened? And this is when he starts to get agitated. His emotions start to get out of control, because this is where we see the flashback, that he's having the flashback, and we're seeing footage of what happened last week. And he has to hang up, but his powers start to get out of control. Lauren starts to freak out because she sees his hands like turning into molten fire. And my dude disintegrates the steering wheel. And he's still trying to touch stuff. So he disintegrates the steering wheel, and then he tries to touch the gear, and that melts off. And it's like, the brake, Reed, put your foot on the brake. But I guess he was just so like overcome. Lauren is scared. He doesn't know, what to do, because he didn't want to show her his power. So they eventually get into a crash, and Lauren Lauren is fine. He's got a bloody head, but she's all good. And she's like, what the fuck, Dad? Like, what is going on? Why didn't you tell us you had powers? And Reed is, trying to explain to her that he was trying to suppress his powers. He basically explains the whole story to Lauren. And they have to get out of there because they crashed in front of like a construction site. It's a whole ordeal. And so Jace, who is just, let's just keep going with them before we get to Jace. Reed and Lauren find a car. They go on their way home, and Reed had a nerve to try to drive again, and Lauren had to tell him, the smartest trucker, she had to tell him, like, no, you can't drive. Like, move over, get into the passenger seat. I'm going to drive this truck right now. I am the smartest person right now. Let me drive. So when when they're in the car on their way back, Lauren starts to explain. She tells him about, and I'm guessing this is the first time her powers manifested. So there was a party that she went to, and all the windows were broken out, and they knew it was like a mutant there. So when she tells her father, Reed came to pick her up from that party, and he told her that he would protect her, that he would find the mutants, because at the time he was, prosecuting mutants. And Lauren finally confessed that she's the one that broke all the windows, because a boy at the party tried to sexually assault her. And that's what happened. The windows around started breaking, and the boy was eventually scared away because of, he thought there was a mutant there. And, Reed is apologizing, but she tells him that, he starts asking, why didn't you tell me? And she tells him, because you were prosecuting mutants, and you told me that you would have those mutants put away. And it's like, but I was the mutant. And it's like, poor Lauren, like I think I forgot that she was the only one who had to deal with her powers on her own. She's the one, she had to learn how to, blah, 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 can't speak. She had to learn to control her powers on her own, while hiding them. And then she's the one that helped Andy. So she has been dealing with this on her own for a very long time. And it's such a shame that that's what's been forced on her. She was almost sexually assaulted, and she couldn't tell her family. Like, that's really fucked up. She couldn't tell her family because being a mutant is worse than being sexually assaulted, I guess, at least in this world. Well, being sexually assaulted just really doesn't matter. Let's not get into this, because I can go on a whole rant about, just read a fucking newspaper, you guys. Ugh, this world sucks. And then, okay, after all this, Reed has the nerve to ask Lauren not to tell Caitlin about this. And she has to go, like, what the fuck? I mean, Lauren is much nicer, but it's basically like, what the fuck, dude? Like, you really want to hide this? After I told you, like, after Lauren is sitting there wondering if she could have changed things if she had told the truth earlier, if she had told about her powers earlier, if she could have changed all of their fates. So she's carrying like a heavy burden. And to ask her to also lie to her mother after all of this is like really fucked up. It's like only thinking about himself. But eventually he's forced to tell Caitlyn, and he gets supported right away. Caitlyn gives him a hug. She's not yelling and screaming about hiding, because he tells her that he's been hiding this for 6 months. And that's fucked up. So, but Lauren sees them hugging, and her mom, being supportive. And there's a look on her face. I want to say she smiles, but I'm also thinking, like, is she also like pissed? Like, just off on the side, like pissed. A small part of her, she has to be like upset that she's the only one that didn't get this kind of support. She couldn't ask for this kind of help back when she first discovered her powers. So I don't know. Poor Lauren. Like, I want to put Lauren, Clarice, Lorna, just all the women, except for maybe Caitlyn. I just want all the women to, maybe even Caitlyn too. I just want all the women to come together and like support each other and get rid of these men. Just get rid of all of them. So angsty Andy, he doesn't have a whole lot to do in this episode. But his main thing is that he's with, when Reva says that she'll allow Marcos to come to help Dawn, Andy is in his room playing games when he finds out, when he tells Reva comes to talk to him, and he tells her that she asks why he's like shut in his room, and he tells her like he heard Marcos was coming. Marcos was a friend of his, and that he he thought it would be best if he stayed in his room. And Reva says, yeah, you thought, but not really. So she tells him, I think she's testing him. So she tells him that, I don't want you to stay in your room. I want you to come out with me and help me deal with Marcos. And, he's like, well, don't you have security for that? And she's like, no, I want you by my side when Marcos comes. And he gets like a little like hangdoggy, and it's like, he turns into a child. Well, he's still a child, but he turns into like, he starts acting like a kid, and he gets a little bit more demure in this moment. And he tells her like, Marcos was my friend. I don't know, what's going to happen. And she tells him like, yeah, I know Marcos is your friend, or was your friend, but I know that you can stand up to your enemies, but I need you to be able to stand up to your friends too. Like, if you really believe what I'm doing here, if you really believe in this revolution that I got coming, you're going to have to stand up to your friends, because your friends are our opposition right now. And so he agrees to it, but I'm like, angsty Andy, just take your ass home, message your mama on this game, and take your ass, like, beg her to come and get you so you can get your ass home. Because Andy, Andy is like regretting all of his life choices right now. Like, Andy was not prepared for this. And of course he wouldn't be prepared, because he's a 15-year-old who had zero life experience, and was working mostly on anger and angst in the last season. Most of his decisions were angry and angst ridden. So this is where we're at with Andy. But and he never had to do anything to Marcos, but just the fact that he was standing there next to Reva while Reva like attacked Marcos was, I'm wondering what they're going to do with Andy. Like, which way is Andy going to go? Because you can tell that Andy is he's not just a villain. He's being manipulated by these older people. So I get it, but I wonder, are they going to take Andy to like full dark side, or are they going to be able to pull him back a little bit? because right now he's just sort of riding the line. Which I don't know how long they're going to be able to do that. So let's go to Jace. Jace is our final man this week. Jace, who promised his wife in the last episode that this was all over. He was going to stop going after the mutants. And then the first time we see him, he's getting out of the car, calling his wife, getting put over to voicemail. And he's telling her about, how his journey was getting there. Like it was a good ride or whatever he was saying to her. And he mentions the fact, like, a voicemail again, like he keeps getting put over to voicemail. And I'm like, Paula, his wife's name is Paula. I'm like, girl, he's done. You're done with him. Like, leave him. He is terrible. He sucks. Like literally in the last episode, he was hugging her and telling her, like, you didn't just lose, a daughter, you lost a husband as well. And he was hugging her and telling her it was all over. And in the next damn episode, he is on this new mission. Oh, it is just too much. Poor Paula deserves so much better. Like, Paula and Lauren are just the most shit on characters in this show. So he goes to the police station and he's trying to talk to a cop, to the police chief or whoever that is, the superior officer. And he comes with all this information. He wants to tell them about how the blackout was, Lorna, and the light show that you saw last night was Marcos, and like all these people are alive. And he really starts to try to take over. Like, he starts talking to the police chief, and the police chief is like, okay, you can work with us for a little while. All of this stuff has to stay off the record. Come over, you can see all of our information. But then it's like he wasn't even there a day when he started talking about, talking about the investigation and like, hey, we can do this and we can do that. And I'm like, what we, man? Like, when did this become a we thing? You're a civilian. You don't work here. You're not part of Sentinel Services anymore. You don't work here. And that's basically what the chief had to tell him. Like, yo, like, take it down a notch. Take a few steps back. We need to set up some boundaries. Because while Jace was there, he heard over the police, over the radio about Lauren and Reed's car accident. And he goes down to where the car accident is. And he actually spots Lauren, when she's telling Reed to move over, that she was going to drive. He sees Lauren getting in the car and he sees them drive away. So this just further confirms what he already knew, that they're alive. And so when he gets back to the station, that's when the chief has to put him in his place and tell him, like, yo, I called about you. I know about all the shit that was happening with you. You got to go now. And Jace, just like what most people do, he made himself seem crazier than he actually is. He's not crazy at all. We know as the audience that he is right. They're alive. But he's his own worst enemy because he's making himself look crazy in the eyes of others. But I think he might have, an accomplice in that station, because we see, like, while he's walking out after he gets reprimanded, he's walking out. We see one of the desk cops, have this pensive look on his face, like he wants to help Reed out, not Reed, but Jace out. So, yeah, so that's going to be interesting. And that is basically the end of the episode. I do have a few questions though. I want to know why Blink didn't tell John that Erg asked her to be a spy, because we find out that there's already a mutant, Morlock, that has the ability to spy on people. Like, he has some goo on his, that he releases that he can see through. So he already has the ability to spy. So I want to know why Blink wouldn't tell tell anybody about it, but why wouldn't she tell John about it? You know, after she gets the truth from John, she asks for the truth from John, and then she doesn't tell him the truth about what she and Erg talked about. And I want to know what Jace's next move is going to be, because I mean, obviously his wife is not having him right now. He can't go back home. I'm guessing that cop might help him out, but I want to know what that cop can do. Like, he doesn't seem like somebody that's like real high up on the totem pole. So he's just a whatever kind of cop. And I want to know what Reva is doing at the Department of Health. Like, what the fuck does Reva have going on at the Department of Health? Oh, it's so interesting. I can't wait until the next episode. So yeah, that's it, everybody. What do I have coming up? Oh, Black Lightning is back. So you'll get my first review for Black Lightning soon, like in a day or so. So that'll be fun. And then I have more Saved by the Bell coming up. The Gifted, I'll be live tweeting all of it. So follow me on Twitter at NerdTravertPod. Use the hashtag NerdyWatch. On Instagram, I'm at The Introverted Nerd, and like the Facebook page at facebook.com/TheIntrovertedNerd. And if you would like to send me feedback, send it to theintrovertednerd@gmail.com. So until the next episode, everybody, later.